Hi, Komal. You're on mute.
Hi, Vandana. Yeah, got it. Thanks. Hey there.
Right. Yeah, hey. So, everyone, Komal is going to be talking about DevSecOps and culture aspects today. I will let her talk more about that, but a little bit about her. She's currently actually leading the security engineering. And interesting bit is that she has over a decade of experience in product security and has been fortunate enough to work with diverse product engineering teams, including IoT applications and cloud. In her current role at Jumio, she's working on growing DevSecOps and security engineering function. And I'll just give it over to her to take the conversation further and share the information. Over to you, Komal.
Thanks a lot, Vandana. Is it okay if I share my slides?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Thank you. All right. So, hey everyone. I really wanted to. I'm first of all, thanks a lot, DevSecOn, for giving the opportunity to me to speak on this topic. I think this is a very relevant topic for all the growing organizations, and I've myself come across this as one of the key topics that we as infosec teams end up dealing with on a day-to-day basis within our organizations. So, just to start the conversation. I guess in my current role at Jumio as well, I'm leading the security engineering team, and one of the key focuses of my current role is also on growing DevSecOps and building the culture across teams, not just InfoSec, across engineering. And I guess it really comes down to how the two aspects of business really come together and collaborate. So. Without much delay, I would really want to get started with it. And I guess the topic is kind of tricky because what I really want to talk about is resolving the ownership battle between engineering and infosec. And before we jump into it, I would really want to go back to the basics, understand why we are having this conversation here in the first place. And I understand the folks who are probably seeing this video, they are already working on DevSecOps in some way in their organization, either for designing it, implementing it, or spreading the word across different teams even. And but why it's important for us to go back to basics and talk about where it all began, because it reiterates the point why it's important as well. So I guess sometime back when we started talking about DevOps and really ensuring that we are working in a more efficient way, distributing responsibilities across an organization as a whole, and not keeping these responsibilities focused on teams to make sure everyone works in a more efficient way. I guess we started figuring out that security is becoming bottleneck. We were not really figuring out how security can be run in parallel with all the other activities which are happening around development, testing, or operations. And we started hearing more and more about how security should be embedded into the DevOps pipelines, how we need more automation in security to make sure that we are really able to run alongside the development and the testing teams while they are building the product. And terms like shift left came into the picture, and eventually, I guess, the community in general decided to agree that yes, we need to make DevOps secure, and probably terms like DevSecOps came into the picture. So the point that I'm trying to reiterate here is that the origin of DevSecOps started because security did not want to be a bottleneck. We wanted to stay ahead. We wanted to run in parallel with the development and the testing teams and the operations at the same time. And that's the whole objective of DevSecOps, to make sure we do not end up doing things in the end. Right. And having said this, I would now want to walk you through a very simplified journey. I would say an almost simplified journey, because DevSecOps cannot always be that simple. But I just really wanted to give an example here on how a growing organization may have, defined their approach on building DevSecOps across their organization. So let's start with the overall approach and how step by step we will probably want to implement DevSecOps at an organization. So remember the keywords: we wanted to automate, we wanted to make sure we shift everything left. So we decided, why not at the coding stage we introduce something like a SaaS tool which will really help us identify vulnerabilities as soon as they get introduced to the system. As soon as the developers are writing the code, we should be able to flag the issues, and we should be able to fix that. And because we are a very diligent, focused infosec team, we really went out there, did our market research, figured out what is the best tool available in the market, made sure that it gets integrated as part of our pipeline, and made it our quarterly goals to really make sure that SAST is integrated as part of our pipeline in a neat way, right? And to be honest, there are so many tools right now which can do this for us. There's no shortage of tools, and many of these tools are now giving us the ability to really configure it at a level where it's extremely customized for you as well. You can define the rule sets and get a lot more visibility into your code. So we decided to do that, and we figured, yes, that is the right first step for us to make, probably. Then we figured, what about the open source vulnerabilities? We step into our journey to achieve the next milestone for us, that is SCA. And there are, again, so many nice tools available in the market. You have Sneak, you have Dependabot, you have Mend, and all of these tools. And I guess there are many more. And even if you off the shelf product doesn't really work for you, OWASP has such a nice tool for doing the same for you, right? So again, we did our homework, we went there, figured out the best tool, got it integrated in the next quarter. And we started building our journey on DevOps integration for there. We started figuring out, yes, maybe IAC scanning is the next step we want to take. We figured we are using containers, we might as well have container scanning happening as part of the pipeline. We started jumping to the testing phase, wanted to add coverage there, so we integrated DAST analysis. And then we went to the deployment stage. Maybe AMI scanning needs to be done, vulnerability scanning needs to happen on as part of the pipeline. And of course, we need to monitor everything, so continuous monitoring, incident response, and looks like we have a good enough plan for DevSecOps. But there's a very significant element that we may be missing here, right? Remember when we talked about automation and shifting left? There's a significant element of consumption of the output of all the steps that we have taken here. There really need to be humans who will be consuming the output of all the tools that you have integrated, and all the steps that we have integrated over here, they really need to make sense from the perspective that the organization can actually act on it, right? So at times I've seen this, that infosec teams are so focused on covering every element of DevSecOps that they tend to ignore the fact that there needs to be a plan for owning the mitigation. There needs to be a plan for adoption of these tools among everyone in engineering. And it's not just the infosec teams that really need to understand how these tools are adding value to you in the long term. And eventually, if we talk about automation, you cannot have true automation unless your humans are also on the same page as your tools. You really need to make sure that people understand the value of these tools, they understand why we are doing it, they understand the end objective behind it, and you collaborate, you work on the same problem statements as them to fixing it in the long term, and not just trying to achieve milestones in the short term. So I guess the point that I was trying to make here was to make sure that we do not get so lost in automating the tool aspect of it that we forget about the people aspect of it. And if we really dig deeper into the problem statement here, of course, we started with security automation, but we did not plan it through, right? We were trying to fill the gaps in the DevOps pipeline from a coverage perspective, but I guess we failed to understand the bigger picture here. Now, breaking it down into pieces, imagine having integrated one more tool into the pipeline without really understanding the processes, and imagine the kind of outcome that it will throw back at you, right? We'll be sitting on a whole lot of vulnerabilities, probably hundreds, probably thousands, all added to the backlog. Now, if you are dealing with that backlog all of a sudden without a plan, without people knowing what to do with it, I guess we eventually did fail to automate security eventually, right? Because having vulnerabilities and of course there would be a lot of false positives that we will be working with here, because we fail to understand how the engineering teams are really working, what are the problem statements that they are working with, what are the kind of processes they are following, what are the frameworks, what are the how the source code really, how does it flow within your organization. Without understanding that, just integrating more and more tools and not trying to figure out whether or not it's actually working for us, not doing that check-in with the teams on a regular basis, that will eventually lead to more false positives. Because a tool is as good as as good as one more addition to your tool set if you're not able to actually act on the outcome of that tool. So the lack of customization and the lack of tool based engineering processes and technologies really led us to a situation where we are now dealing with a lot of false positives, leading to a bigger backlog. And that again leads us to lack of defined processes that might work for us, and again leading back to the ownership crisis. And that's where the whole crux of the equation comes into the picture, because who owns it, who owns this backlog, and who owns the day-to-day operations and understanding of the tool, and who makes sure that the tools are actually adopted or not. And that's where I've seen majority of the conflict between the engineering and infosec teams happen across organizations. So I guess I've been working in this space for more than 10 years now, and one thing that I've learned is no matter what business you are leading, you really need to collaborate with people to be able to drive it. Security is no different, right? So in this case as well, because of lack of visibility across how engineering wants it to happen, or engineering the kind of problem statements that engineering really needs to be solving, just trying to fill in the gaps will not give you security automation. At the end of the day, it will eventually lead to more conflict, because again we never sat down with engineering to build a strong relationship to really understand the problem statements, and that's where security is back to becoming a bottleneck. So that really beats the whole purpose of implementing DevSecOps in the first place. We are again back to square one, wherein we are trying to automate security and not just becoming redundant in the whole process. So now that we understand, probably this is a problem that we want to be dealing with, right? So how do we exactly work on resolving it? One of the first things that I have understood in my roles over the years is you need problem statements which make sense, and those problem statements cannot be infosec problem statements. Those statements have to be defined alongside engineering, because if you really think about it, DevSecOps is all about building the culture within an organization now. And you cannot build culture across any organization if you do not align on the problem statements that you need to be working with. As we discussed earlier, there are so many problems to solve in your DevOps pipeline. There is so much coverage to add, but you really need to know what should take priority over what. And you really need to know how something needs to be done in order to actually make sense for the larger audience. And that's where ensuring that you have the right problem statements and the right priorities to be solving those problem statements comes into the picture. It's extremely important that you collaborate with the engineering teams right from the beginning of your journey, and not assume that as an afterthought, that once the integration is done, of course in some months everyone will start using it. It will not work that way, and it will lead to a lot of confusion later. Another approach that of course we have tried a lot is doing a lot of POCs. And POCs are excellent for two reasons. One, they bring the engineering and the infosec teams together before a long term commitment is done for making permanent changes to your way of working, right? And it also kind of breaks the ice on solving some of the topics that you really need to be solving. And it also helps you learn what actually works for you. What may look very good on paper may not actually be relevant for you. So there are no two pipelines which are identical. There are no two organizations which function in the exact same way. So there is no reason why the DevSecOps approach, which may have worked for one organization, will work in the exact same manner for another organization. It has to be customized. And I guess POCs are an excellent way to start doing that and really collaborating with engineering teams before you make a long-term commitment to change things for good. And of course customization. So you really need a tailor-made approach. As I mentioned, everything is working differently for different organizations. The way your code is running, the way your frameworks are being used, the way your base images are being updated, or your code repositories are being updated, everything is different for everyone. And we really need to understand how that customization element has to come into the picture for us to actually leverage DevSecOps. And you won't be able to customize it unless you understand the engineering side of the story, right? How can you customize something to work for them if you don't understand them in the first place? So the customization element can only come into the picture once you have really understood how engineering is working and how they are doing things. And you really need to align your approach to match the same. Another important aspect is, of course, communication, explaining your objectives to the engineering teams. I've seen this happen many a times, that people fail to communicate what they are trying to achieve at the end of a security initiative. They end to they aim to achieve a more mature DevSecOps pipeline. What value add will a SaaS tool, like whatever SaaS tool that you're recommending to them, what is the value add that it will actually bring to the table, and what is the value add that you will get from integrating another tool like SE or IAC scanning, any of these aspects, right? So you really need to be communicating that and not assuming that it's a obvious problem statement. It may not be that obvious for everyone. It may be very obvious for you, and at the same time you really need to understand the engineering's perspective on this as well. You really need to understand what their long term goals are. They are under a lot of pressure. They are in a very competitive environment. Of course, they have to ship new features left, right, and center. It's a very competitive market out there. So, of course, anything that you change has a significant impact on their way of working. You really need to capture that in communications early on in the process and not wait till the last moment to get that done. And yeah, of course, the last point on this would be listen and learn. You really need to get a lot of feedback from engineering and act on that feedback. You really need to be very good at listening, and that is something that I would really recommend all the infosec teams to be doing, because you need to understand how they operate, how the engineering is working, what they actually need, and accommodate that feedback in your long term roadmap. And I guess one thing where many of us go wrong is we try to accomplish DevSecOps as one milestone, and that's not it. It's not a milestone for infosec. It should never be a milestone for infosec. It's a journey for the whole organization, and we have to make it together. So if you think because someone's not able to adopt your tool efficiently or faster enough, that cannot be the reason for you to complain about it. You really needed to accommodate that in your roadmap. How long will it take for a tool to get adopted? And I guess the whole story here can be summarized in just two words: you really need to start talking more. I mean, we are dealing with people at the end of the day. DevSecOps is no different, and security initiatives are no different. So you really need to be going out there and talking about it a lot more. I'll also take some time to explain one approach that I've seen being followed in my current role. So we are trying to collaborate with engineering teams at a lot deeper level. We are really trying to make it work for them. And when we say shift left, we don't just mean it in terms of the tool sets, right? Shift left has to happen on people perspective as well. You really need security advocates, security engineers being there at the ground level, working day to day with your scrum teams, participating in their day to day events, participating in their planning events, retrospective events, all of that. They really need to be there to speak on behalf of your security initiatives or mitigations to be done, helping them understand the issues, helping them understand the tools, understand the value add that a tool is bringing, and really hand holding them throughout the adoption process whenever you have made a change. And of course, it's a two-way street. So you really gather feedback from engineering also through the same channel. Once you start participating more in day-to-day activities of engineering, you also start to understand what are the real challenges that they are struggling with. What is it that we can do to help them understand our objectives in a much better way? And that's where better participation from both ends comes into the picture. That cannot happen unless you have engineers, security engineers, working very closely with developers and QA teams. So you cannot really drive that change unless you are committed to doing it at that level. You also need to open up a lot of channels for collaboration that serves again in a way that you're trying to gather feedback from all the sources that you have, trying to brainstorm on topics, come up with problem statements and long term strategies, initiatives as part of those discussions. Really gather your queries and really see whether or not what you are trying to do here is making an impact in a positive direction or not. And I think this becomes one of the best ways to really gather feedback on your own initiatives as well, and also spread the message around what you really want to do. Security awareness, if you have people working at ground level closely with the scrum teams, of course there's no reason why you cannot leverage the same channel for spreading awareness on the topics that you are trying to drive, and spreading awareness on problems that you think all of us should be working together as a team, right? So that should also be responsibilities of the security teams that are working on the ground. And in the end, you need security leaders who are able to act on feedback, who can go back and change things if they really need to for the betterment of the whole organization, and who can really accommodate that feedback as part of your DevSecOps strategy as an organization. So this is just one approach that I have seen happen, and it works because we are really able to connect with engineering in a way that a true infosec team working as part of DevSecOps culture should be able to do, and that is really helping us do it. Are there challenges to it? Of course, there are significant challenges to it, because Jumio is in the business of establishing trust for other organizations, and security is one of the key functions that we have here. And having said that, it becomes really important for us to make sure that if we really want to stick with this approach, we need very promising security engineers who can do it at the ground level as well, right? So it's not easy to do it. It's probably going to take a lot of effort for you to build a growing team which can actually do this for you. And you need people who can collaborate, own initiatives, drive the conversations with engineering, and that's not going to be easy. But I guess when you are trying to make change across the whole organization, you cannot expect it to be very easy in any way. So yeah, that's pretty much about what I really wanted to touch upon in today's topic. And I really hope that this opens up some conversations around this topic, because I know for a growing organization, growing DevSecOps can be a very different story, and it can be a very challenging one, and at the same time it will be a very rewarding one as well. And I really hope that this little bit of this little bit of experience that I've shared here may help someone out there to rethink their approach on DevSecOps and really do something about it. So if this was helpful for you, I mean, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can see my profile here, and I'll be handing over back to you, Vandana.
Thank you so much, Komal Preet. It was a wonderful session and especially great insights. I totally loved it. And I don't see any questions at the moment in the chat box. But what I can say is that if you can share your LinkedIn profile or Twitter, probably people can come back to you, because a lot of times what happens is that people just come back to you after the session is done. I can see a lot of people are watching. So nobody has asked question, but it'll be great if you can share your details and people can come back to you.
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn here, and I hope you're able to see my LinkedIn profile.
I'm just sharing. Yep, I have shared it. Yep. So thank you so much, Komal, for joining me today. It was wonderful to have you.
Thanks, Vandana. And thanks for the opportunity to speaking on this topic. This is something that's very close to heart, I must say, in my day-to-day work. And I really liked talking about this as well. Hope it helps someone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We would come back next month again with our next set of speakers. Stay tuned for that. Thank you.